Thanks, Blake, and welcome all of you who are hopefully participating today and certainly in attendance from around the globe. We enjoy welcoming you to our different webinars, and many of these webinars that we've produced are available on our website, so you can listen to them later if you choose, or to other ones that we've produced. Today is a very interesting topic. I know probably the ones of you who are on this call are very interested in the concept of brand culture and engagement and the connection or relationship between those models. And I want to start with just a little bit of connection of our topic to real life. So we all have seen the advertisements, the fantastic engagement ring moment. We've seen maybe television programs like The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. And we also know that in reality, relationships particularly are ending in a divorce rate. Marriages are at in excess of 50% these days, and divorce court and those types of programs are also extraordinarily popular. So if it's that difficult to have a relationship with someone and to be engaged with one another and understand the dynamics that go on the personal level, it's probably also very difficult, or even more of a challenge that we're all facing in the workplace in trying to fulfill our obligations with our organizations. So the other interesting fact about the workplace engagement factor is that 100% of the relationships that actually do form and occur are going to end in separation. So unlike in marriage, where you have a dissolution of relationships and they break down more than 50% of the time, we are in a bit of a losing battle here with the employee relationship. Effectively, people are all going to leave. And the way they leave and the relationship that you build with that person while they're employed will be determined on the way that they are treated and the truth and understanding that they find in the role that they're in. We're all familiar with the concept of truth in advertising, and I think we're really asking you to contemplate the connection between your practices of hiring and recruiting, what your brand says about your organization to people who are considering coming to work in your company, and what their experience is actually like. And as we contemplate that, we'd like for you to participate and give us a little bit of insight into how your organization presents itself and how you think that people actually do actually experience the organization. And Blake, will you conduct the poll for us?
Yes, our first poll question is, how similar is your recruiting and onboarding messaging with your actual company culture? Would you say it's very similar, somewhat similar, not at all, or are you just not sure? So please take the next few seconds to go ahead and answer that. We'll wait until we get a good number of responses. Good, we've got about a 60% response rate so far. Give that a few more seconds. All right, looks like we've got a good turnout on that. I'll go ahead and share the results. So how similar is your recruiting and onboarding messaging to your actual company culture? 20% said very similar. 58% said somewhat, 11% said not at all, and the other 11% said we're not quite sure. Philip, what do you think that indicates?
Well, it indicates to me that the majority of us recognize that there is a disparity between what we say in the beginning of the recruiting process and the onboarding process to what reality is. So there is a variance, and at some level, and I think the opportunity here that we have is to examine what those variances are and determine, when we're looking at organizations who are getting it right, how closely are they connecting their messaging around employment and engagement with the brand. And the real tie-in with that also comes around a fairly common statistic that we understand is the connection between employee satisfaction and engagement and customer satisfaction. So who are the buyers of what we're offering, and who are the perceivers of our brand on the outside, and how do they relate and connect in with our employees? And I think for those organizations that don't know, there's obviously an opportunity for them to explore and to learn more. And for the organizations that, the 20% that say that it's very well connected, I think that it's great that they're recognizing that that joining up is what makes the difference between a great organization and organizations that are getting it right and organizations that aren't. And I think what we're also going to be looking at today in further depth is that connection between the brand, the external view of how the organization is perceived, the internal reality or the fabric of the organization, the company culture, and the statistics around the employee satisfaction and engagement. Now, we've recently produced an article that's available on our website, and we quoted some very interesting statistics around employee engagement in North America. And Aon Hewitt has done research that shows that employee engagement statistics are down another point this year to 63%. And that 70% of American employees aren't working to their full potential, and 18% of those who are actively disengaged. And that's a Gallup poll. And you can see this article about engagement. It was published this summer. It's available on our website, which has quite a bit of statistics around the employee satisfaction levels and the engagement levels that are existing in businesses today. So I think that there's a real connection that we need to pay attention to here as we start to look at what organizations are doing. But let's take a step back and let's focus on the individual for a moment. And we're all the professionals on the call who are focused on employee development and talent development, you're very familiar with this very traditional hierarchy of needs. And what we've done is we've taken a step back, looked at the individual, and we think about it in the context of what an organization is providing. So clearly, if an organization is providing the basic needs, which is the support level on a financial component, safe working environment, maybe we get a little bit into the healthcare needs being alleviated through employment. That would be people who are doing the level minimum. And then as you start to go up the hierarchy, you can see that an organization that is engaging people on teams and starting to recognize the importance of team development and team culture, and especially in our time now with the interest by employees in the social aspect of integrating and connecting with one another, and the ability to network with former colleagues as well as current colleagues, and to make this information quite public, it's really much more important to create that belonging within the organization and that team development response. As we go further along, it's clear that employees want to be acknowledged for their accomplishments, but it's not necessarily the financial piece. And I know many of us know the statistics some years back were much more about financial pay, compensation, and so forth being further down the list on study after study. We have seen in our research compensation and benefits planning coming higher on the list, but I think what we're really talking about for this esteem element is around acknowledgement for performance and accomplishment. And then ultimately the organization that is really developing the full potential and creativity within individuals is going to be working at the higher end of the spectrum when we're talking about engagement. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean in practical terms? So let's look at organizations. Let's look at 4 companies, 2 that seem to be getting it right, and 2 that seem to be not getting it right. And I find this to be a very interesting comparison, because when we start to look at these 4 organizations. So the sources for this, the bottom 2 organizations are companies that may not be getting it right at all. This coming from anecdotal information from Glassdoor. And basically, what are employees saying about the organization versus what the organization says about the organization? And there's quite a separation in those 2 points of view. What we found with both of the organizations that are placing at the lower end of the spectrum is that their core values, their brand, their cultural messages are very complicated. They have, in this case, Express Scripts, they have publicly on their website information about values to help understand and connect their values. They also are doing a lot of things that look right. They're providing a lot of the typical things that you would expect to see a large organization to provide to be competitive. But what you're also seeing are employees' views that the organization is managed top-down. It's an extraordinarily hierarchical environment that people are expected to work their tails off and that the rewards are few and far between. And you can also see that they're really focusing on, from employees' perspective, on continuously taking away from the employee while they're continuously being asked to contribute more and more. So interesting looking at their financials, you can see 08 versus 12, and of course we have to factor in the Great Recession, but we can see that they've had tremendous growth in their top line. But if you look at the profitability, and just a simple looking at their very complex financials, by the way, publicly traded company and a lot of growth and changes in models and so forth, but you can see the profitability is certainly not in line with the growth. And I'm sure there are a lot of reasons why, but the employees seem to be reflecting those in the marketplace. Now, looking at the worst place to work per the list, per anecdotal information, is the Dish Network. And on the information, you can see again they are showing less as far as what they're offering, but they do have, and on their publicly available information, they do have quite a bit of detail around their value structure and information. But they do seem to be putting out there that they're very focused on sales, and that's what the employees are saying. And interestingly, you can see that their sales figures have continued to grow over the last few years, not at the pace that we saw Express Scripts, and their profitability as well. But there's a real gap between what their profitability is and what their sales are. But it's just interesting to see that if this organization were really putting out there that their cultural values and their focus and their brand is around sales, and they made everyone to be feeling part of the team that is the priority, and maybe collaborating with the employees more around that, they would be able to get more alignment and not be at the bottom of the list. And certainly there are lots of opportunities, I'm sure, in that organization for evaluation. So now looking at the other end of the spectrum, the top 2 best places to work, we have SAS, which has been known for many years, been profiled, and we may be experiencing some technical difficulties, so I apologize. The SAS has been profiled for many years as one of the leading organizations, top organizations to work and to be part of. They have a real vast array of service offerings for their employees on their campus. They don't report their profitability that we've been able to see, but they do have consistent growth in their revenues from 08 to 12. But what's interesting is in both number 1 and number 2 on our list is their philosophy or their approach or their brand alignment, and very basic, I would almost say down-home sort of way of talking about their culture. And in this case, if you treat employees as if they make a difference, they will make a difference. Now, we've seen in other organizations that are well-known branded organizations with very highly esteemed brands, they have the same difficulty and problems that no one wants to leave. Therefore, you have the perception of lack of developmental opportunities or career growth. So this may be one of the only or few negatives that an organization might actually have to say about the employees would have to say about an organization that's getting most of the things right. And then as we move along to our best place to work, which is probably not too much of a surprise to many of you on the call, you can see a very well-known brand with a lot of information in the marketplace about what they do for their employees and people who want to work there. On the other side, you can see what are the challenges in this culture. You have a lot of overachievement. You have people who are very competitive who are going to Google as a result, and you see the financial results and you see the profitability. It's growing in somewhat equal amounts. Again, if you look at the values of Google, you're seeing something very interesting on their values. Don't be evil. However, they do have a 6-pillar framework on their values. They also have a very down-to-earth way of talking about their value structure. So that's some examples of companies that are getting it right, some that we know, and some of the companies that may surprise us, companies that are getting it wrong. And we're going to talk about more specific techniques and what our research is showing around what companies are doing to try and get it right or closer to correct on engagement and aligning brand. But first we're going to have another poll, and I'm going to hand it back over to Blake.
All right, our second poll question, let me put this up there for us. So what steps do you currently take to engage employees, you and your organization? Select all that apply. Do you offer exceptional access to benefits and compensation? Do you provide company-sponsored events and activities? Maybe offer transparent opportunities for employee career development. Anything other that we don't have listed? You have a maximum number of options here. Or do you just offer the minimum required per standards of your industry and by law? So please take a few moments to check any that apply. People may be really thinking, what do we offer? Got a good turnout so far, about 60%. Let's wait a few more seconds. All right, we got almost 70% response rate for that. I'm going to go ahead and close that and share. 32% said they do offer exceptional access to benefits and compensation. 61% said, yes, we do company-sponsored events and activities. 39% offer transparent opportunities for employee career development. 39% said other. And 9% said that they offer the minimum required per industry and by law. Philip, what do you think that indicates?
Well, great. Well, thanks everyone for participating in our polls today. Really interesting as far as the, in particular, the transparent opportunities for career development. The next point I'm going to share with you is what we've seen in our own research, that in 2011, 33% of organizations were using career development to engage for the purpose of primarily engagement. We've seen in 2013 that number rise to 38%, and on this sampling we have 39%. So that shows that there's some consistency in the level in which when that question is posed amongst other components where it gets a response. So it's a growing area of recognition. I think it's interesting that exceptional access to benefits and compensation falls below that as far as this group is concerned. That we are, I think, going back to some of the statistics that we've seen around engagement, that pay and compensation have been moving up the chart somewhat. I would also speculate that as more millennials are coming into the workforce and more boomers are retiring, the commitment and loyalty question and factor is shifting, and that millennials may be a little bit more focused based on the economic timings and trends and what we've seen in the economy in the last 10 years, may see more of a requirement and more focus on the compensation side than some of our retirees. The company-sponsored special events and activities, not a surprise there for us to see that. Very fascinating that nearly 10% of the people on the call are doing the minimum, and I think it's something that's a message for all of us that we have to continuously be aware of what we are doing to engage and protect the workforce, the intellectual capital for our business, which is the most important asset, our people. And I'm going to move on to the concept of career development and speak a little bit more specifically about that, because we do have 39% of the individuals on the call who are talking about transparent opportunities for career development, and that means that we have 61% who aren't using it necessarily for engagement, or maybe the transparent piece is throwing you a bit. So let's talk a little bit more about what that looks like. When we are hearing from organizations from around the world and we talk about career development as an activity, oftentimes organizations say they are in some sort of career development offering, or providing some sort of career development offering. But what we're seeing is truly a lack of understanding around organizational transparency. Maybe it's a capability, or maybe it's it's a philosophy that the organizations are still more closed in what they want to offer as far as information is concerned. In our research and what we've seen for best practices is that the more information that can be made available, and using technology, of course, is a brilliant way to do this, it facilitates conversations, it provides more access for individuals. It does start at the top as far as what information can become available, but what we're seeing in the leading organizations, we're seeing as much information as possible around career options, career opportunities, access to detailed information about roles, requirements for roles, and going even further into what does who are the people who hold the have decision-making authority, and that you have permission to be able to network and get to those individuals and present yourself and present your profile and network. So developing a lot of different skill sets around transparency. When we have unstructured environments and situations, we'll also see that managers are hiding people, or managers may be unaware themselves what opportunities exist, and therefore they don't transfer that information or translate that information very well to some of your best employees especially. And so they may end up looking externally for opportunities as opposed to staying with you. And then one of the most common situations we see when we're as professionals talking to senior people within organizations is that they're concerned that by making career development options available or opening the door to information, they feel like they're starting to make promises to people. And this is typically a symptom of leaders looking at organizations in very traditional ways and methods that individuals can really only move upward. We know through our research that people need to move in all directions, and creating the environment where people can explore up and down, vertical, exit, etc. as far as career options, that's the healthier approach in creating structure. Certainly if there's no structure, employees are going to be less strategic in their thinking. They're going to have less strategic definition from you, and they may be more strategic, only focusing on their needs and not how all of the picture fits together, and may be much more likely to seek job experience and opportunity elsewhere. And then finally, which is really the starting point in what we're doing in helping organizations go back to the beginning of the thought process, it's that in an unstructured environment, everyone really believes very different things about career development and what that means. And an organization that's a leader in career development and providing opportunities to employees, they're organized around a career vision statement, and they're able to communicate that effectively throughout the organization on an ongoing basis. So it's not a one-time rollout, but it's a continuous communication technique. And it's a strategic activity to help individuals understand that it's not just about achieving financial results, it's not just about hitting those sales targets, it's not just about releasing that new product, but it's about the individual and what their needs are in the organization. And it joins all together. If you go back to our slides earlier about the connection between aligning brand and culture with engagement, this is really one of the critical ways of doing that. So what are 4 steps that we recommend based on all the research and information that we've been looking at and all the years of experience we've had in talking with organizations? One, and I've really touched on this quite a bit today, which is using the career development concepts to create organizational transparency. careers within organizations. They want to know what the opportunities are. Now, they may not always be interested in it because they're focused on their job or they're focused on their lives, but when things start to change, they want to be able to see a future within the organization. And when that job posting goes up, if you have a job posting board and you think that working with a career center model is sufficient, it's too late for most people. They need to understand what it takes to be successful into a new role. They need to know and they need to learn the skills to be able to communicate their value to the organization. And all of that's done through the transparency model. We've seen a tremendous value for organizations that have developed coaching methodologies and mentoring programs for managers and for HR. So leaders becoming the coaches within the business and understanding as part of the coaching methodology how to align the behaviors that they're looking for with the brand and coaching employees for success. So setting them up for success within the organization through the coaching techniques and really being an organization that can provide, has the capability to provide coaching at all levels. Looking at your company values, obviously very critical. Are the company values, are they overly complicated? Do you have values to help define your value structure? Have you spent years and years evolving, and are they sacred cows? And do they still reflect the actual culture within the business? And so I think if we go back to the original poll that we did, we saw a very high number of people who are on this call who there's somewhat of a connection between the messaging and the actuality in the business, and I would challenge you to look at the values as well and see if they support one another. And then finally, closing the gap between your culture and your brand. And I really like the example that we've seen at Yahoo lately is how they've really taken a stance within the organization to say, look, while we're a high-tech company and we have this brand in the marketplace for a long time and we have an image, in reality, we want people to be in the office. We want to have an environment where people know what they're getting into when they come to work here. It's a serious business. We want people to be in our office every day. We don't allow working from home anymore. And the flexibility is being minimized for whatever reason strategically. And, you know, you've got to respect the fact that they're putting that out there and they're changing the impression of the brand and what it is to work in a high-tech company like Yahoo. And I would say that that's an example that you can look into your own organization. What is the gap between your culture and what you actually put out there in the marketplace as far as your brand? So we're going to quickly do another case study, and I want to make sure we have time to go through some of the questions because I know some questions are coming in. But we have a very interesting case study from a major corporation today that we'd like to share with you. And there are a lot of different topics that we're hitting here, and we'll bring it back through the case study to our topic today, but I'll take you on a bit of a journey to explain what the challenge was for Unilever, or is for Unilever in general, which is not unique to Unilever. But as an organization, a global organization that owns many different brands throughout the world and probably are distributing and manufacturing brands in almost every country today, they recognize that their customer base of Unilever is 75% women. However, when they look internally around the globe and they look at leadership and they look at the potential of leadership within the organization, they see that many women are lacking around the board table, clearly, in their president roles in different countries, in directorships and management positions. So they recognize that that's a real challenge, and it's an inconsistency in the future in protecting their brand. So what did they do about it? Well, obviously they took a very aggressive approach around career development solutions, and they were able to look at what do they need to do to promote and to develop women, and what were the ways in which models and numbers and figures and activities that they wanted to put in place to achieve, what would make a difference. And they took a mentoring approach amongst other activities, and they were able to implement a high potential selection program and to develop specific women who had the potential to move into global roles. and also to establish networks so that the people in these programs were able to learn about each other and to connect the dots. So obviously if you're familiar with the Unilever organization and you know people in executive roles, they're traveling around the world in new assignments on a consistent basis, and they needed that network to help people to do that. They also needed to recognize and to look at their flexibility programs, their career planning activities, their diversity initiatives, and how they would be able to embed this important initiative change into their organization as a whole and into this mentoring program. What we were able to do in working with Unilever, we played a role in helping to develop mentors and mentees and providing training for them around the globe for several years as this initiative was rolling out. And ultimately they were able to achieve the objectives that they were looking for. They were able to impact change within the organization in the fact that 26% of the mentees were promoted into more senior roles, but basically over those years they were working to increase the pipeline. That was the end game. So they could have a larger base of women to pull from. So from a culture basis, they were able to create greater gender balance within the organization. And they were using different types of career development initiatives to help impact the gender balance. They were obviously able to boost up their succession pipeline and ensure that the promotions that were coming through the program, that they were clearly qualified people, that they were people who had extra chance and support to learn and to develop the right types of skills to fit into the culture in order for them to achieve their long-term goals. Certainly they're going to have greater engagement with women who are in the program, but specifically with people around the globe who recognize that Unilever is taking steps to improve their overall gender balance and their brand reach to their customer. And finally, they had international recognition in achieving actually the Catalyst Award. So they actually, it was December of 2012. It says 2013, so apologies there. If you're a Catalyst Award winner for 2013, I don't think it's even been announced yet. But the 2012 award in December was given to, one of the 3 awards was given to Unilever. And Catalyst is a fantastic organization. You can find more about Catalyst online. It's supported by really the globe's greatest organizations to help promote women in organizations and to recognize best practices around the development of people's careers. And so Unilever got the recognition externally from their peer groups. They were able to engage people and within their organization and make statements about their belief in looking more like the marketplace where they're serving, and obviously to enhance their culture as they've gone through this process. So some final thoughts, and thank you very much for putting up. I have a slight cold, so I apologize if that came through on the call today. But some final thoughts for you around engagement in the brand culture alignment and the importance of that. It's really just to ask you to look at your messaging, talk to your marketing department, and look at your information from your chief executive's office. Is all of that information being developed individually, or are you tying it together? And is there consistency from that startup phase with a new relationship through the experience? And how much of a lifelong relationship are you developing with people who are coming into your organization? Are the values that have evolved, are they sacred cows, or are they actually values that represent the views of people within your organization and what you as an organization actually believe in and what you're actually asking people to engage with? And clearly we know that even on this call, nearly 40% of you see career development as a way to enact engagement strategies within your business. And hopefully today you're also able to see that you can enact different types of activities within the career development framework to engage people in their career journey. And just to wrap up, as we think about that original slide around the honeymoon that we may go on that may ultimately end in 50% divorce rates, and we recognize that we're really in a losing battle and that all of our employees are going to move on someday. What role can we play in ensuring that when they move on, that the relationship and memory that they have from our organization is intact in a positive way? So thank you very much for the presentation and time, and I'd like to turn over to any questions there may be.
All right. Here's one that came from an attendee. This is a pretty good one. What are some ways you'd actually recommend to give employees access to key decision makers?
Right. So very good question. And in practical terms, we've seen the key decision maker relationships being developed through mentoring programs. That is a fantastic way for people to cross over job levels and be able to connect with a mentor. And you might think, well, the executives, they don't have a lot of time, but there are ways in which, especially using technology today, that a leader in an organization can mentor many different people. And that leader doesn't necessarily just have to be a senior executive, but it could be someone who's also the best in class within a certain part of the organization. And being able to follow, for people to be able to follow that individual, and I know you're familiar with some of those terms from the social media sites, but being able to follow someone within your business and learn what it is that is part of their success, the good, the bad, and the ugly of that when you're in that following aspect.
Okay, so kind of using social networking to network with your own employment decision makers within the organization?
Could be, and also the mentoring piece if you want to have more specific one-on-one connections.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to structure, if that's the goal of the mentoring relationship, being able to structure the relationship for that purpose. It's exposure, it's opportunity to get some insights. So those are techniques that we see organizations do.
Okay. So that's for key decision makers, higher ups, and HR, things like that, I'm supposing. What if an employee wants to apply for a position that's actually outside their own department? Do you think it's best to speak to their own manager first and have that out in the open? How do they start that process?
Well, it's another great question, and it's, if you're communicating that as an organization, what are those career movement options? So some sort of a move within the business, and this is how our organization, what we believe in these moves. So what are our transfer guidelines or transfer policies? And so making that information easily accessible on an HR intranet or through your career development system or your online career development portal, like we make available to our customers' employees, then an individual will know what the T's and C's are. And what's more important about that, in my opinion, it's not just that the individual knows that, it's that the manager knows it. And then if you, within your organization, you do have that courtesy step where the individual does have to say to their manager, I have found an opportunity and I'd like to explore something like that, it can be tricky. And so some organizations we've worked with, they have made it where employees are able to go directly to opportunities. That's their culture. In other organizations, they have been able to create such an open environment that managers are developed to not feel threatened by that action. And so it makes it more comfortable for the employee and the manager to have that conversation. But it's a great question, and there's going to be cultural implications on that.
Mm-hmm. I think this is more in response to the topic of making employees comfortable engaging that situation. One of the attendees asks, how can leadership help establish this culture of transparency when people might be afraid of speaking up and making mistakes and kind of taking those steps toward engaging more of the specifics of the company's operations on their own?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what we've seen with organizations, it's a process. And, you have to get buy-in from the top, and you have to work it through the organization so that the benefits and the value of what is being put in place is understood. So we all know it's the right thing to do, to have an environment where people have the freedom to develop and the freedom and the opportunity to move and to network within an organization. We know that's the right thing to do. But sometimes we have to go through the process of helping to educate our leaders, helping to educate sometimes our HR, our learning and development, helping to educate our managers, and developing them along the way and getting their commitment to the organization's view. So we have an 8-step process. Ironically, one of the things we were going to talk about today, which we felt like it was just getting to be too much information, was actually showing you what that 8-step process looks like. But we actually go through an 8-step process with our clients. And the very first step is getting that agreement, that alignment, and then being able to communicate that effectively on an ongoing basis so there's no doubt.
Yeah, maybe we'll include that 8-step process at the end of the slides before we send them out.
Great.
Okay, kind of on the flip side of establishing transparency from leadership and kind of engaging employees so that they do feel comfortable, in a lot of cases, managers don't necessarily want their team to make a lot of development progress because they're concerned that they're going to lose their employees because they become overqualified just in the daily experience of their job. How can they communicate a career development culture when they still want to retain those team members? And I guess it's kind of a tension between career development and retention.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, human nature is going to take over ultimately, and retain or trap. You know, what's the question really? And helping people to develop and helping people along the way and helping to understand that it's not always up that people need to go. It's a variety of directions. So it's job enrichment or secondments. It might also be a move downward for a period of time. It might be the complete lateral move that an individual requires. So I think in our minds, we have a natural response as managers, or we see this from managers oftentimes, that it's up and they're leaving us. But it's about helping and understanding what each person's requirements and needs are, having good, solid conversations with them, and understanding how to coach them and connect people with opportunities in the business, and not have that fear. So the manager who doesn't get that today, well, people leave managers. They don't necessarily leave companies, and they make that job for us as engagement professionals or talent development professionals increasingly difficult. And so I think we have to also continuously look at the development planning process for our managers, and managers who don't get this strategy and they don't get these concepts, maybe they're not going to be the right fit long-term for the culture that's going to be required of our companies to be competitive into the future.
So I guess striking that balance is crucial for a business's survival in that case. It
is, and retaining and developing people, because if you have a stagnant workforce that are continuously leaving or being trapped, then and the manager is the cause of that, it's our responsibility to start to untangle that, unwind it.
That's a good point. Okay, this question comes from an attendee. So they have a training and development department with 3 people. What do you think is the #1 item that they should and could feasibly focus on to improve their employee engagement for the next year, 2014?
Yeah, so it's a hard question to answer. You know, you have 3 people. I don't know what you're currently doing, obviously, or how large your organization is. But having 3 people on your team, it's a blessing in many organizations to have 1 person or a part-time person who's working on engagement. So I would, without knowing what you're doing, I would probably, in the most practical way, I would look at the 3 areas that we've talked about today, which is the perception of your brand with your marketing team. What does your culture really look like, and what are your engagement strategies, and are those 3 areas really connected? And so that's the first question you might answer. And then I would, looking at the advice from this group, 39% of the people on this call today have indicated that career development is an excellent way to go. So you might start the ball rolling and talking about what does the organization believe in regarding career development. And is that a message that you could put out into the workforce? Just as a statement, so you have said what the organization believes about career development and people's opportunities within the business. And that could be very practical. It could be that we believe people have opportunity to develop. We want people to have the freedom to network within the organization. And we would like you to inquire about the opportunities that you would like to explore. If you have no other way of doing it, you could simply solicit from people who are thinking about opportunities, and you can start to codify that information and maybe connect some of the dots for people. If you're in learning and development in your company, you probably know where the opportunities are. And if people are raising their hand and they're saying they'd like some opportunity to do something different, maybe you can be the connector.
Very good. Here's a question. The issue of engagement is really kind of a soft concept. It seems actually pretty difficult to measure and quantify. So if you're using technology for career development and to enhance engagement, how do you go about measuring the success of those efforts?
So it is something that's easily quantifiable in actuality. It just depends on what metrics you can get people to agree on. So in some organizations, we have a long-standing case study on our website regarding people who have stayed with the organization that we know without certain career development activities they would have left. So we're clearly identifying people who verbalize that they've stayed, but they've made the decision to stay, otherwise they were leaving, but because career development was in place, they found opportunities within the organization. So that is a tremendous way in which you can start to measure. There are also other statistics around the return on relationship. So if someone that you are doing a great job with in the organization, who they then decide to leave the organization, which is going to be everyone, by the way, so this is not a few number. What ways are you able to quantify that relationship after someone has left? So you have your exit surveys, most likely, and maybe you're getting some basic information about what people thought about your company after they've gone. But is there something that that person could do for your business after they've left? Could they refer a client? Could they refer someone to come to work? Could they refer a replacement? Are there ways in which people who've left, so this would be a real test of your relationship with them and the quality of that relationship, that they could actually do something for you and in the post-employment activity. So there are techniques that you can use, and there are probably statistics that you're gathering, which are probably basic data information, and I would actually challenge you to look at your satisfaction. Does satisfaction mean you're continuing on the status quo, or are you actually able to get people excited and enthusiastic about your organization, that they're actually going to go beyond being satisfied, but actually they are brand ambassadors for your business, and they're excited about your organization. So can we get beyond satisfaction, and can we get to much higher levels of enthusiasm?
All right. Thank you very much for that elaboration. That was really helpful. For this, we have another question, and this is directly related to transparency, and this is kind of a tricky issue. Looking for suggestions for how to make employees and enable them to still be able to verbalize concerns and feel safe when, in a very specific context, an organization is having open forums and employees are posing questions and raising issues, and afterwards their managers are pulling them aside and kind of chastising them, telling them that they should not be raising such issues. Obviously, this form of engagement needs to be enforced from the top. How can leadership head that off and really create the kind of culture that works against that and counters those negative responses?
Mm-hmm. Well, that is a fantastic question. I'm a member of a CEO peer group, and we talk about this sort of activity quite a bit. We live in an age where employees are able, like we looked at our 4 case studies today about the people who are getting it most right and people who are probably getting it most wrong right now with engagement. A lot of the information we're getting is coming from employees who are talking about our organizations outside the business. Our customers can talk about our products and services very openly today. So we live in an age where there are really no secrets. And if someone wants to say something anonymously or publicly, they're able to do that. And I think we have to embrace that as leaders. There's no putting that genie back in the bottle. And frankly, if your organization, your chief executive, your senior leaders don't understand that, they don't know about Glassdoor, they don't know about other ways in which customers are engaging with one another, and people are coming to the sales meetings and they're coming to the employee meetings already knowing a lot about what's going on, they need to be educated. And I think we play a role in connecting our brand, the external view and the public view, our culture, what the reality is for people. We have an obligation to connect those two. And we also have an important role to play in making the best experience for the people as they are engaged with us as employees that we can. Make their lives as meaningful and as positive as we can by the actions that we take. And we have to ensure that our leaders understand how social and how open communication is today, how transparent communication is today, and embrace that.
That's a really good point. Thank you. Here's another one from an attendee. How do companies leverage the whole concept of the employee life cycle so they can communicate their employee value? What's the best way to go about leveraging the employee life cycle with employees?
I love that question, and I think that, in my view, where this begins, it's recognizing that people are going to be alumni of your business the day they begin. And I think it's getting that message, what do you want people to think about your business after they're gone? And think about the end of the relationship as you're planning and you're thinking about the beginning. And what are the experiences that you want people to have along the way on that journey with you? What is it that you want to what is it that you want them to believe happened to them while they were in your employ? And what is it that you want from them? So if you calibrate your thinking around the career life cycle and broaden that to that this is just one encapsulated experience that the employee is going to have in their entire career, and you pepper throughout your development activities this ongoing thought, I think you're going to have a much higher level of engagement. You're going to have a much more honest relationship with employees, and you're going to have a much more meaningful transition process with people as they leave, so that you're going to have more brand ambassadors in the marketplace, people who want to come back, people who are going to refer future employees, people who are going to want to refer future business to you, and people who are going to appreciate more what happened while they were employed at your organization. So I would be thoughtful of them leaving day one.
I like that. Well, Philip, it looks like we're about out of time here. Thanks so much for responding to all that Q&A. Really good feedback we got there. So thanks to everyone for attending today's webinar. If you'd like a copy of today's slideshow or recording of today's webinar, you can find the links to both on our LinkedIn page. And we'll also post answers to popular questions that we may not have gotten to answer today. I do believe we got through most of them, though, so that should be a minimal list. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please feel free to email us at info@ensala.com, and we very much do value your feedback on our webinars. Thanks again, Philip.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.